Rồi.
Yeah, you can see. I said, you got to remember on half blind. Oh, yeah. How'd you walk? Yep, big walk. 7 days down, done and dusted. 3 to go. I just kept it walking down on the street or on the track. On the track.
I just grew it long enough.
Give us a test. Give us a test. Test, test, test. Testing, testing, testing. Everybody hear me? Got a microphone.
So welcome everybody. I'm Christina, and Evan and I organize this event. I'm part of the artist group bringing together artists and ocean awareness, and we're really so excited that you guys have enjoyed the art and came to this event, and we're really looking forward to talking a lot more about how we can protect the ocean and work together on everything. So I'm super excited about the turnout today. So I just wanted to introduce myself. If you guys ever have any questions about anything, please let me know, and I'll let Evan take over.
Cool. Thank you, Christina. And welcome to everybody. Thank you all for your time and coming here today. I'd like to say a special thanks to Sea and Marine and Warren for hosting and providing the venue for today. Thank you, guys. Fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. And definitely a special shout out to Christina and Deb for organizing the amazing art exhibition. Very inspiring to see that. It's going to be part of a wider Amplify series, which I'm sure you guys will hear more about. I think there's going to be a big festival organized in Phong Mata, hopefully, as long as the world can return to normal at some stage. Normal. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Andy and Raf and Mauro for their assistance with coordinating and helping us with getting this event organized for today. Thank you guys very much. Okay, so why are we here? I'm just going to provide a bit of a brief update for those of you that may not have been involved or in some of the efforts to date, and just provide some brief introductory material for those that have maybe heard of our efforts but are just now getting involved.
I just put one slide in there which brings us back to the idea that we are born with obligations for this planet, not with rights. And I think this quote puts it very well. I found it just the other day, and it's sort of reflecting what we have been talking about in the prior two meetings before. I'll leave you a few seconds to read, and I think it's befitting our time to remember that.
Thank you, Thomas. We've got, sort of quite a wide variety of interests obviously joining us. It's been really encouraging to see all of the fruitful and cooperative discussions to date, and really looking forward to continuing on with that. So essentially this initiative began earlier this year when just a very small group of local residents became aware of some of the latest evidence indicating quite substantial decline in some of our keystone fisheries in our backyards, as well as the wider Hauraki Gulf Marine Park. Most notably, I'm sure you've heard about what's happening with things such as scallops, crayfish, etc. For those not aware, in 2000, the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park was established by legislation to protect the natural and historic features of the Gulf, citing the fact that the Hauraki Gulf has several endemic plant and wildlife species that are found nowhere else in the world. The Act provides for an integrated management approach to the Gulf with an aim to improve the habitat and environment therein. The Act also created the Hauraki Gulf Marine Forum, which produces a State of the Environment report every 3 years. Alex Rogers, the Executive Officer of the Hauraki Gulf Forum, is joining us via Zoom, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully all the Zoomies can hear us. And so it is obviously that State of the Report, State of the Environment report, which provides the basis for a lot of the evidence that has drawn so much of this concern. However, since the creation of the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park 20 years ago, the state of the environment has not improved. According to the Hauraki Gulf Forum's most recent report, toxic algae blooms are now common, with 9 harmful blooms occurring between 2000 and 2019. These impact fisheries as well. Those resulted in harvest closures and/or public warnings. More fish are being taken from the Gulf commercially than before the park was created. After research and monitoring within the park, some fish stocks have needed to be rebuilt, while others, such as gurnard and kawai, are teetering around their maximum acceptable yields. Crayfish populations have been substantially reduced. This is evidenced by both decreasing numbers in reserve areas as well as significant cuts in both commercial and recreational catch limits, cut to approximately 33% and 50% respectively, to allow the stock to rebuild towards the target levels. Additionally, more seabird species have become threatened. Kelp forests have been replaced by kinnibarrens, and the number of recorded non-indigenous marine species has increased substantially, and 6 new marine pests have arrived, all in the last 20 years. Just the next slide, please. So a community hui was called in Mercury Bay over the Queen's birthday weekend back in June, earlier this year. This included speakers from across the spectrum, including Joe Davis from Ngāti Hei, Dr. Tim Haggett from the University of Auckland, Sir Michael Fay, environmental advocates, and industry spokesperson, with several more stakeholders also in attendance. The speakers were followed by a panel discussion with additional guests. The event was well attended with significant interest, well beyond our expectations. There were several hundred people that ended up attending this event. So it was quite clear from the meeting that the community interest was very high and that the initiative should continue. It was also noted that whilst there was some disagreement between parties about the viability or otherwise of specific fish stocks, there was general consensus on many issues, in particular that something needed to change if we are ever going to reverse the current trend and realize our full potential. The event was recorded, a link is available on YouTube, and an event summary was published on our Facebook page set up for the event. In July, a follow-up workshop was held with local community stakeholders from Mercury Bay and surrounding communities. After an update from guest speakers, a workshop was facilitated to encourage attendees to record and discuss their vision, issues, and wishes for the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park. Although there were a range of interests and perspectives, as facilitator, my observation was that there was still an amazing degree of overlap between those taking part, particularly as it pertains to issues such as siltation from forestry, land use issues causing toxic algae blooms, but even amongst the majority of attendees, there seemed to be a general consensus of the desire to, for instance, call for a ban on trawling within the boundaries of the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park. A synthesis of the individual responses was collated and published to the Facebook page shortly after the event. Whilst this was in no way intended to represent each individual's views, it is a representation of the most consistent themes that were expressed throughout the feedback. We will today be using the results from the previous HUI workshop to guide us through this next step of defining what we are going to do about addressing those visions, issues, and wishes that were defined. That brings us to today. As word has spread across the wider peninsula and interest has grown about the work done to date, other communities have expressed a desire to jump on board and/or engage in a similar process for their communities and backyards. Similarly, substantial interest has been raised towards combining our efforts into a formalized group. Whilst at this juncture I can only speak for myself, I believe that if done properly, if we continue to collaborate and work together to define our common future, there could be significant strength in such a group. Furthermore, whilst there will always be significant interests and initiatives in the there will always be specific interests and initiatives in the disparate communities, i.e. what works in Whangamata might not work in Mercury Bay and vice versa. If we can agree on an overarching mission and objectives, there could be significant strength in the support that individual communities are able to provide one another, i.e. no one is having to continually reinvent the wheel, and we could work together to start achieving the goals that we hold in common. Today, we are again joined by individuals from across the spectrum on marine issues. While we are not going to be able to solve all the world's problems in 2 hours today, I am hopeful that we can continue the free, fair, honest, cooperative, and polite discussion that we have had to date. There may be some ideas that you don't agree with, but please, let's take the time to hear each other out so we can work out what the low-hanging fruit and in those areas where we do agree. We all stand to benefit from maximized abundance. We're on a journey, and today we'll primarily be focused on what we are doing as opposed to how we are going to do it. Today you'll hear briefly from a lineup of speakers. We will be joined by Mike Bana from Tairua, a Tairua local documentary filmmaker who will speak briefly about Tairua's aspirations and potential with regards to marine protection. We're also very fortunate to have with us Te Afaroa Gilbert from Ngāti Pū, who will share some of the recent discussions regarding marine protection around the inshore islands at Whangamata. We will then be joined by Miranda O'Connell, who has kindly joined us via Zoom from Waiheke Island. Miranda will share some of the value wisdom from her efforts with the Waiheke Marine Project and the collaborative framework, which could serve as a model for our proposed group going forward. Lastly, we will hear from Dennis Tegg, elected representative for the Thames Coromandel on the Waikato Regional Council. Dennis will be sharing with us some of his knowledge on how to be most effective as a group in the Coromandel context. The remainder of today, we want to hear from you. We will be breaking into groups and collecting your feedback and ideas on a potential group structure going forward. Just a small note, I know that some folks in the room are aware of and or been involved in and engaged in the sea change process in the Hauraki Gulf Forum. This is in no way intended to replace those efforts for all intents and purposes. Just, again, my personal sentiment, they seem to be very well run, very engaging processes. We want to know how we as a community can complement those existing processes and forums going forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Mike Bana, a Tairua local, unless anybody would like to just quickly, has anybody got any questions or comments that they want to throw out before we get stuck in? Cool, thank you guys very much. Mike.
Too easy. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a documentary filmmaker based here in Tairua. I specialise in ocean-based films, documentaries. I've worked for nearly 35 years for Discovery Channel and National Geographic and the BBC, as well as our broadcasters here. And I'd like to say that I pretty much live in what's close to paradise here in Tairua. It's a pretty amazing place. If you look out that window and you look at that estuary, we are very, very lucky. Everyone is here for a different reason. The majority of us are here because we've chosen lifestyle. Some are tangata whenua. Some are here intergenerationally and have been on the land for a long time. Some of us are here for work, not that many though, unless you're a builder, there's not a lot to do in Tairua. But the majority of us are here because we enjoy the lifestyle. We love what we are surrounded by. We're surrounded by this incredible piece of ocean. We've got awa flowing into this estuary that are some of the cleanest in the country. Not the cleanest, but they are pretty good. And this estuary still has pippies and cockles and a wealth of fish. And then out here in the Moana, that's pretty good as well. But it is nothing compared to what it was 35 years ago. And spending my life in and under the water, and I spend more time underwater than most, I can tell you that the changes globally are extraordinary. The changes nationally are pretty extraordinary. And here in Tairua, too, the changes have been pretty dramatic. And if we look at this bit of water behind us here, the estuary, we can see a lot of changes that are happening in there. The nitrification of the water coming off the land. We've got sedimentation coming down from both our urban areas, our farming areas, and our forestry. All of these things are changing the ecosystem that's in here. There used to be great clouds of baitfish in this harbour, amazing big workups and massive amounts of things like jack mackerel and sprats. A lot of that's gone. So we need to think about, as a community, what we actually want. And if we want to carry on and have the lifestyle we've got, we're going to have to make some changes. And we have to do that collectively as not only a community, but we have to do that as a country. And if we look at the things that we can change now, if we look at the things that affect us now, we can start to do some pretty amazing things with the estuary. And one of my good friends runs a business called the Hope Project. Sam Judd, who started an organisation called Sustainable Coastlines and has been on that process of improving the quality of our river systems and improving our estuaries and our foreshore by planting and organising fringe planting of a lot of areas. This is a great opportunity that we can look at from a Tairua perspective as well. Getting local iwi involved so that we can set up nurseries, getting the schools and the community involved in seed collecting, propagation of plants, and then planting these areas so that we can better protect this environment. For us to do that, it doesn't take any extra work other than all of us getting together and deciding we want to do it, and then putting the mahi in and making it happen. With the ocean, it's a little bit different. We've got a major problem with overfishing in our ocean. We've seen the effects of it out here, or I certainly see it. We've got big trawlers going backwards and forwards, not from here. Trawlers coming out of Auckland, trawlers coming out of Tauranga. We've got the Perth seiners coming out of Tauranga and taking all those big schools of baitfish. Those bottom trawlers doing so much benthic damage, it's ridiculous. And then we know that the damage that's been done by the dredging and the dredging of the scallops. But we also know that we can actually make things happen. We can create change. What happened with the scallops up at Apito Bay is a really good example. Ngāti Hay decided that was something that needed to change. Joe Davis got behind it, the local community board got behind it, and a rahui was instated. And then that rahui went on to government, and government has since endorsed that rahui, and this entire area basically from Slipper Island all the way to the top of the peninsula is now a complete ban on taking of scallops. And that's a wonderful outcome. It's a wonderful short-term outcome, because what it does is it allows those stocks to rebuild, but it also takes away something that I really enjoy. And part of my life is also about going out there and collecting kaimoana. So I want to go and have a feed of scallops. What I don't want to have happen is when that rahui comes off in 2 or 4 years, for what's been happening in the past to start happening again. And that's where groups like this really need to start to do the mahi, start to do the work, start to work out what we can do as a community to make sure that that doesn't happen again, because it will. So as soon as that opens up again, we know that those dredges are going to come through and they're going to carry on taking those scallops down. They're going to do more benthic damage, which is going to mean that maybe the next time those scallop beds don't bounce back, we end up with a situation like they've got down in the Marlborough area, where the scallop beds have gone and they will never come back because of the benthic damage that's been done down there. So we need to be thinking about what we can do long term to ensure that the dredging doesn't come back into those areas that are important to us. And I think Dennis will have some great ideas about how we might do that at a regional level later on to talk about. The other thing that we've done here really successfully is the pink mau mau. Now, as a little community in the middle of nowhere, within the space of about 3 months, we've managed to get legislation changed. It's in the process of changing, but it will change. And you've got to ask the question, how do we as a little community manage to do that? Well, first of all, there was a problem. There was a gaping hole in legislation that needed to change. But anything like this, you think about that little piece of fisheries legislation in the big picture, government has got so much on its plates at the moment. For that to become something that they take and fix in a very short space of time is unusual. The only reason that happened was because of the outcry we created as a community. The media went nuts on that. It went out on every major media platform. It was front and centre in front of our politicians. Our politicians were forced then to look up and take note, and they did. That was followed then by a series of very, very carefully crafted letters from all the different organisations that are affected, excuse me, talking to the Minister about what needed to change, why it needed to change, and how it could easily be changed. And that's resulted in what we've got now. People talk about the fact that it took so long for the Rahui to get put in place up at Apito. Changing legislation and law is not simple. And for the Minister to make the decision to close Apito, he had to have solid scientific evidence that the scallops were in fact down. He can't listen to me as a filmmaker going out there and say, I can't find any bloody scallops. He needs to have science to back that decision. The reason why he needs science to back that decision is because the commercial operators are going to come at him if he doesn't. And that includes Māori. There's Moana Fisheries have a big part of that stake. It includes everyone. So we've got the commercial industry is an incredibly powerful lobby group. And in order for any government to make serious change, we've got to have all the evidence in front of us. So he needed that evidence in order to make that decision. And that's what we need to think about in terms of overfishing out here and how we look at and how we change that. We need to have a balance. We need to make sure that what we do as a community reflects our community, reflects us as New Zealanders. We all have different uses for it, whether it's wellness and the joy that we get from going out and catching a feed for the family or feeding our family, whether we're a commercial fisherman who goes out there and fishes because that's how he makes his bread and butter, or whether we are surfers who enjoy the fact that this beach is clean, or the kids that play in that estuary and don't get sick. We've all got different reasons for making sure this all works. The most important thing is what we've been talking about here is trying to get cohesion amongst all the different wants and needs and wishes and getting everyone on the same playing field in terms of what we present as what we want to have change. The more people that are on the same page, the more organisations like what's going on in Whirianga, what's happening here, what's happening in Whangamata, what's happening right around the country, that are all expressing the same concerns and raising the same issues, and then collectively creating a voice, government will listen. And that's what we need to think about with things like our fisheries. We also need to make sure that we align with the right organisations when we go forward with the decisions that we make. There's a lot of different organisations you could align with. You've got Greenpeace, you've got Forest and Bird, you've got Sea Shepherd, you've got all these different NGOs out there who all have wonderful ideas, and basically they have the environment at the core of what they want to do, but they're not necessarily going to fix the problem. What we need to do is make sure that we collectively as a voice talk about what we want, work out what we want, make sure that that's a balance, that everybody in this community is included in what we want, and then take that out to the wider public. Take that out, join up with what's going on in Whirianga, join up with what's going on in Whangamata, and collectively take that voice to government and start to make those changes. And that all starts here. It all starts with all of us sitting down, working out exactly what we want for our little Tairua, making sure that what we want is similar to what's going on up and down the coast, so that we reflect what this community is, basically what all New Zealanders want. We all want the same thing. We want a more abundant ocean. We want our water to be clean so we can swim in it, we can dive in it, we can fish in it. We want the opportunity for work, for me, for the commercial guys. We need to get balance, and that requires abundance of those marine stocks, and it also requires us to protect the waterways that flow into the Moana out in front of us. So this is the perfect time for us all to stand up. One of the things I've learned in filmmaking is New Zealanders have an incredibly short attention span. Where you throw something out there, they go, oh my God, that's terrible. 2 days later, they've completely forgotten about it and they're running off in a different direction. That is always a problem. And if we want to make change, we have to collectively get together and work through it. It doesn't happen overnight. It has to happen over a period of time. We have to be consistent going forward if we want to have those changes happen. And that's where it starts, right here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. I think Andy is going to come and introduce Te Wharoa.
Kia ora. So I'm Andy. I'm a contract ecologist from Whangamata. Firstly, just want to apologise for my singing. It'll teach me to turn up to a gig hungover. It probably won't teach me, but never mind. I just want to say thanks to the organisers and the hosts of this amazing event already. So why am I here? Well, very much echoing Mike's sort of comments. It's sort of been my happy place for 40 odd years, Whirianga, Tairua, Whangamata. And I guess what is just startling to me as an ecologist is what I've seen disappear and change in those environments, like the loss of whetū and the reduction of size of crayfish around Whangamata and siltation of our harbour, nitrates and fertilisers and everything else combining to cause unnatural distributions of species like mangroves and all the issues that go with that. And so about 7 years ago when I decided to build my whare in Whangamata, I became aware of the fact that Uru Ngāwera, a local hapu, owned those islands out in front, and I've sort of specialised in terrestrial ecology and pest removal from our land habitats. And so I approached that hapu, and from the word go, I think they were a bit suspicious of this person they didn't really know, and who is this skinny white fella turning up to come in onto our islands. But really, I think this sort of group and what happened with that hapu is really for me the key reason I'm here is that we had the discussion, we built the trust, they got to know me, we got to understand what our sort of aligned passions were, and what it is we want to achieve for our community and our tamariki, and going forward as a community what we want to see in our fishery, and they sort of instilled that trust in me. And so I just wanted to say huge thanks to Uru Ngāwera, and we've seen quite a bit of wildlife and ecology return to those islands. I think I started monitoring about 5 years ago. We couldn't find a penguin alive on the islands, very little in the way of titi and mutton bird and things like that. And we removed pests from those islands. I think they're New Zealand's 4 newest pest-free islands now, just off Whangamata. And so we've seen korora come flooding back, and we've got breeding seal colonies, and the mutton birds are back en masse, and we're starting to see orcas and stuff even hanging around. And it's that classic thing, isn't it? You make a small change, and it can result in a big positive outcome at the other end. So I'd like to introduce Te Wharoa Gilbert of Uru Ngāwera. I want to say thank you very much again for the trust you've given me, and we're moving from the islands now into marine ecology and talking about rahuis around those islands, and so seen the changes there as well that's happened terrestrially. So with that, Te Wharoa.
Ko tū ana mihi ahau ki te mihi ka koutou, tēnā koutou. Please excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous. Not every day I'll come to speak to a big group of people, especially one where I'm standing here and I'm the only Māori in the place, am I? Another, kia ora Mike. But I'd just like to mihi to Mike for your kōrero first. Hey, brilliant kōrero. Thank you for that and your work that you do. Okay, we're going to start. Jeez. Well, what I'd like to talk about first is relationships. And what I mean by relationships is relationships between two peoples, Māori and non-Māori, or Māori and Pākehā. Growing up in Whangamata as a young Māori was brilliant, fantastic, but it has this dark side, unfortunately. But I have not let that affect me as a person growing up. I always managed to look past that, and I really thank my mum and dad for that, for allowing me to keep my eyes and my heart open to people. And now I'm married to a beautiful Pākehā lady. She really changed my life, and we have a beautiful son together. And that's what I talk about, relationships and the coming together of people. Because for things to happen, for what we want to happen, you must engage with iwi, and iwi must engage with tangata tiriti. And we are people of the treaty, all of us together. So for me, that's a really important aspect. We gave Andy trust, and he took that trust and he's done the mahi. And we've seen the growth on our islands. And being the owners of those islands is wonderful, and it's hard because Andy's heard the bad kōrero. I've heard the bad kōrero, but as I say, we look past it, we give the trust, the bro does the work, and the islands are flourishing. And that's a wonderful thing. And it's a really wonderful thing. People can be beautiful, but people can be harsh. But as I say, we can look past that and carry on. So let us all talk kanuhi to kanuhi, face to face. We can go forward together. We can't go forward separate. In the years previous that have gone by, there have been other groups that have done projects in Whangamata, and they've either tried to go around us or ended up knowing that they've had to come and engage with us. When they've come to us towards the end of their project, we turned around and we said, no, we won't tautoko you because you've had to wait, because you tried to go around us first, and now you're at the end of your project and you need us. Should have came to us at the start, and we would have awhi'd you, just like Andy did. And it's been brilliant to work with Andy. He's such a committed person. And me growing up in Whangamata, being a keen diver, mostly diving between Onemana and Opoutere, I too have seen the changes, as Mike have said. I've seen massive kinnabarons, massive ones, where big snappers used to swim. They don't swim there anymore. There's a point in Whangamata called Tarakihi Point. Anybody know that point? As you get out of the harbour and you go around, well, it's just point now because there's no tarakihi there. And as Mike said, that comes down the trawlers. And old fishermen have told me it's the trawlers, the tarakihi come around the top of the North Island and swim down. Well, the trawlers are smashing them up there, and that's why we're not getting anything down here. So those are the major impacts. The other impact on Whangamata is the human impact. Whangamata is growing, more houses are being built, which means more toilets, but our sewage plant isn't growing. Our sewage plant is still small. And when in the summertime, at the height when we got, say, 70, 80,000 people in town, and the sewage plant overflows, there's only one place that sewage is going to go into. And it goes into our water, where we all swim in, and then we end up with hakis. So that's the major impacts that we're seeing in Whangamata. So the thing that I look to, and always will look to, is the future, and what I can leave behind for my son, for his children, his children's children, your mokopuna, for all of us, so they can look around and look at us and say, this is the wonderful work that those before us have done. So I really hope that a coming together of people can really help make us all go forward together, and that's important, that word, together. Because together we can do it, apart we cannot. So I'm just going to leave that there because I feel I've said enough. But I hope, and I know you all understand what I'm saying, but when I leave here today, I'll leave with aroha, because that's the best thing that I could give, and that's the most important thing that my oldest brother taught me. At the end of the day, everything comes down to aroha. E pāna ki tēnei wānanga, a ke koro mō teirone tēnei wā, nō reira, tēnā koutou. Kia ora, everybody. Kia ora.
Thank you guys very much. We'll now be joined by Miranda O'Connell from the Waiheke Marine Project. She's going to be speaking to us via Zoom.
Kia ora koutou. Let's do a sound check. How's it coming across? We good to go? Okay, I'm just checking, Thomas, can you see the screen? Fantastic. So, kia ora koutou. Nā mihi kia koutou mā o Ngāti Hei, Roa o Ngāti Pū. E nā rau rangatira mā o nā tangata whenua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Nā mihi kia koutou e te ahiahi nei. He kai whakatere mō te Waiheke Marine Project. Ko Miranda Cassidy O'Connell aho. And it's, so kia ora everybody, good afternoon to you all. It's a real privilege to speak to you today and support your efforts to improve the outlook of the marine life across your area. Because of course we're all linked. Te kapa moana is a very powerful being and it is what links us all. So it's a real privilege today, and I'm looking forward to sharing a bit about the Waiheke Marine Project. As you see, that's essentially what the project is about. And I want to take the opportunity to echo and support to tautoko what Mike and Te Ata Whāroa have already said, that this is a long game and we can make a difference. and we need to do it together, walking our Te Tiriti partnership. So, well, just a little bit what I want to do in this bit of time, hearing where you guys are at and how powerful your gathering is, that you're continuing to gather. There's no... might be useful to have a look under the hood of what the Waiheke Marine Project's been doing in the last 2.5 years. So apologies if it gets a little detailed, but the point is to share, and so you can pick what bits that might work for you, what bits you think, nah, what are they doing over there? So it is a bit of a look under the hood. So one of the ways in looking at this, when you really do get collaborative and you work together, you need to work out how you're going to work together, and of course that takes some resources. And so phase one supporters, just giving you a bit of a hint, people who have been helpful for us along this time, because who knows, they might be helpful to you guys as well, but in your own area. And you'll see there the endorsed by the Hauraki Golf Forum. That was a real buzz, and tēnā koe Alex on the call as well. So back in May this year, the Waiheke Marine Project spoke to the Hauraki Golf Forum, and the forum was so impressed by the efforts that they unanimously endorsed the work of the Waiheke Marine Project. So that was a nice sort of hug that we're on the right direction. So what are the driving values of the project? As read, and I won't talk too long because I'm sure you can work out what they are, but straight up the top there is walking our Te Tiriti partnership. And this is as important, working out how to support tangata whenua, but what it takes for you as tangata tiriti, as Pākehā, as new immigrants, however you've arrived in your place in New Zealand, what are you doing to walk that journey? Taking a real whole system focus, it's that land and sea, that we are all connected and not get caught down too many rabbit holes as we tend to do as humans. Keep an eye on our common ground. Again, a human tendency is we can put, Mike talked about having a short time, not being able to concentrate for long. We also have a tendency to really put our energy into the things we disagree about. And so the Waiheke Marine Project is embraced, and it's been very powerful, putting our energy onto the bits we agree on and really making those work. Always being self-managed, you know, keeping checking in our egos, checking our own issues, and just focusing on working for the common good. Collaborative practice. And that last one is crucial. It's all knowledge. So consciously, and we talk about this and we're working on our capacity on this all the time with the Waiheke Marine Project, is how to understand the knowledge that's held by those on the land, locals, right? People who really understand, they live there each day, they see the ebbs and flows. How to use and understand the knowledge of mātauranga Māori, and how to understand the knowledge of science, sort of Western lab science. You don't have to integrate them, but you have to honour all the knowledges. So really briefly, what the Waiheke Marine Project did, because I understand that at your last hui back in June, you watched one of our videos. So you will have a bit of a sense already of what the Waiheke Marine Project has been doing, so I won't labour the point. But we got to the moment after a number of public hui, not dissimilar to what you guys are running, to really get to that bit of common ground, we had to spend some serious time understanding what people were thinking. So into a room exactly a year ago, so 30 October through to the 1st of November last year, 76 people came into a room, and over 3 days, co-facilitated by myself and Here Aroha Skipper. Some of you in the room might know Here Aroha. She lives in Tapu, so not too far from you guys. And we facilitated this incredible 3-day hui where all these people, you see the list down the side, people of all those voices came together and said, answering the question, how do you protect and regenerate Waiheke's marine environment? Unanimously, these things were agreed. And I know you can't read them, and you don't need to, right? Because you will be agreeing common ground for your own place. But what I'm sharing for you is that those 76 people came to this unanimous common ground. And that is now our absolute foundation. It's our rock solid, that's our measure of success. So as we go forward, we're always checking back. How are we measuring against these 9 commitments? So you'll see there, Te Tiriti, regenerating Māori, bringing back that life force of the Waiheke marine environment, how we're learning, how we're integrating the management, How are we using the various tools for protection? Does that mean rahui? Does it mean marine reserves? Is it taipuri? Is it mataite? All these many options that are out there. Making sure the legislation that is there is actually used. There's an amazing amount inside the various bits of legislation, whether it's the RMA, the Fisheries Act, the Marine Reserves Act, you name it. There are bits in there that we're really not applying. Focusing on clean water, the Waiheke Way, that's a very important one, doing things in a way that speaks to the character of the island, of the motu, and circular economy. So it's the reality that as humans and environment, we're an interconnected system. And so very quickly after the Future Search, Ngāti Paoa laid a rahui at the end of January, much inspired by the one that was Mike referred to before with Ngāti Hei. And that's on 4 taonga species, so on paua, koura, tipa and mussels, and solid, still waiting. You'll see the map on that one. Still waiting on the decision of Minister Parker. So congratulations to you guys for getting your one through. Been a few months since this. As I said, it's been almost a year now. So we've been working away how to bring those 9 commitments that you saw and really bring them into action. And so we've just started into phase 2, which is incredibly exciting. It's like everyone's been spending this time getting their surfboards ready, and now the waves are up and we're in. And as of a few days ago, this is the new steering group that is at the tiller of phase 2, which is turning all these ideas into multiple reinforcing activities that will then together deliver this regenerated Māori and a thriving Waiheke marine environment. So now we're going to do a little peek under the hood, as I talked about. How are we managing this beastie? Because it is complex. Again, as Mike referred to it, it is, even though it's definitely complicated healing freshwater, there is a level of, not simplicity, but straightforwardness. You plant, you slow down your sediments, you're cool, right? The complexity in the marine environment is multi-layered. So to meet that, we've taken on a multi-layered way of operating, a collaborative governance structure. And these are our funders going forward for phase 2. So for phase 2, we've put up a 3-year project plan, and we're about 60% raised our funding, which is really exciting. So we're just in month 1. And yeah, these are our main supporters. And you'll notice down the right-hand corner, and I'm raising your attention to this, knowing that you're having your session with Dennis afterwards. The Waiheke Marine Project is umbrellaed by the Hauraki Golf Conservation Trust. So it's already a pre-existing community trust. They act to support a whole lot of small initiatives. And the reason that the Waiheke Marine Project chose to do that and not set up its own entity is this great hope that this work that the Waiheke Marine Project is supporting will be system change work. That over time, the Waiheke Marine Project will no longer be needed, that it will be biodegradable. So, whether that's going to take 3 years, 6 years, 9, but we're using an existing trust, and therefore most of the energy and money is focused on supporting actions rather than running a new environment. So Ngāti Paoa, who are the primary mana whenua for Waiheke, have gifted this awesome metaphor for the way we're running a project. And it's kind of cool way to understand it. So it's like a kete. And you'll see it's an open weave kete. So that's when the pipi that get put in, the ones that are too small come through the holes, right? So the metaphor of this is all actions are absolutely encouraged. Whatever people think they can do to protect and regenerate the marine environment, it's kete pai, it's good. Pop it in the kete. And if it's not ready, if it's not mightn't have the right structure, mightn't have the right intent, needs some more knowledge, then it will fall through the kete. You'll see the red run there is the rib or the whiri that's holding the kete together. And so that is those of us who are working in it to hold that backbone. And so we've got a steering group, you saw the photo of that. Ngāti Paoa ki Waiheke, so those of Ngāti Paoa who link to the 3 main hapu of Waiheke, they have a rōpū, which has dedicated funding within the project, and they are a crucial part every action that's taken is co-led with Ngāti Paoa, and that we have whole focus on communications and knowledge amplification. So another way of looking at the kete is we've sort of made it flat so you can get a sense of what it is. And you'll see down the right-hand side the 9 commitments that I referred to. So this is the common ground that was reached at the Future Search. And then the how is how we've arranged it. So you'll see again all those, the different parts. So my job, along with 2 Kai Mahi, some gorgeous Ngāti Paoa woman who's finishing her business degree as an internship through this project, and another young woman on the island. The 3 of us are part-time contractors, so we're the workers, and everybody else is volunteer, and we're talking thousands of hours of volunteer. And yet we're now at this point of phase 2 that any time there's chance for leverage to contracting and work and some monetary pay, as well as the in-kind remuneration you get from participating in this work, we take it. So there's many more opportunities are coming up now for internships and contractors, and it's very exciting. So I know you guys would be interested, well, what about the what? What are you achieving through all this lovely work? And this is just a snippet of the ones that are coming through. So really cool, just a lovely visual one. When you drive up to the main town and on Waiheke called Oniroa, I'm sure a few of you in the audience have been there. The youth have been working with Ngāti Paoa and doing an amazing mural all over the side of the Waiheke dive shop. So that's a really sort of a visual reminder that this is active. People are thinking and willing to change their behaviour to protect and regenerate their marine environment. That little photo, you're saying, I think both Mike and Atawharoa referred to the kina barons. So we've got a really exciting project where we're finding out what happens when you remove the kina in an attempt to rebalance the environment. Does the seaweed regrow? And it's looking pretty exciting, and over the summer we're pumping up our efforts with that one, and it's really exciting actually, and we're working hard at that particular bay there to completely remove the kina. And again, circular economy, when that kina comes out, because it's over the summer so the roe will be a bit sweeter, we've got Ngāti Paoa dedicated coordinator to have distribution of that kina, so it's not wasted, and do some learning of all the knowledge in there. So we've got some youth who are very excited about this summer project, and they'll be part of kina taken from different parts of the island, and they'll be able to compare, do some measuring. What are the gonads like? What's the size? What's the health? What's the sweetness of the roe? So you can hear that it's an endless learning going on. Goodness, I'll take too much time to go through all of them, so maybe I'll just pick another couple out. Probably the coda, the crayfish. Personally, I hail from Te Mātua Maui, from Hawke's Bay. So when I moved to Tāmaki Makaurau to Auckland, I was gobsmacked in a bad way. Where were the crayfish? Where are the coda? And so this is a very exciting, what would it look like to bring coda back to Te Kapawana? And so in June, gosh, no, maybe it was May, everything is merging a bit. We had a volunteer divers, well organised by people within the project, did a baseline survey and just found out, well, what's going on with the coda at the moment, and it's a very depressing result. But that's, again, giving us a good baseline, and then we're going into some very exciting exploring what would it mean to bring the coda back. And you'll see there's a whole lot. And partnerships as well, you'll see down there about partnering with Sustainable Seas, which is one of the national science challenges, and we're working with them to develop a probably GIS-based action tracker. So all this incredible work that people are doing, let's track it, right? Let's not just go sort of like headless chickens. As people are doing things, what was the baseline before they did the work? How's it? What are the successes? Is someone else on another part of the island doing that? So we're opening up what is it that people are doing, and we're attempting to be as methodical and yet creative as possible. So the next few slides are just a little bit of, I was talking to Thomas and Evan, and we thought maybe it would be handy to share some of the lessons we've been learning in the last 2.5 years. And this is absolutely number one lesson, and that's work with and learn with mana whenua. And that word with is crucial. Everything we do is at pace of mana whenua's pace. Dedicated funding, dedicated time, and Waiheke is a really interesting place in the sense that it is sadly quite decolonised. Much of mana whenua is pushed off the island really, and now it's very hard and very expensive to be able to be on the island. So there's a whole process of rematriating socially as well as what's happening under the water. So it's just, Te Ata Wharoa said it as well, this is crucial, and it means the long game works. Another lesson is that whole system. Again, what's happening on the land affects what's on the sea, what's going on in your part, and it was cool to hear Mike talk about that, what's happening at Whangamata and at Tairoa and Mercury Bay. They all will be a bit different, and they're all linked. So it's about being able to think local there, think of the big picture, but act local. So think whole system all the time. This is a bit of my thing. I'm a collaboration geek, but stay staunch to your collaboration. Really hold each other to account. And when you find yourself being a bit of an idiot, or you see your mate being a bit silly, just check in. Hey, how are you going? Is this going to help our common ground? And the equity of the voices are really important. If you find that things are moving along really quick and it's all sweet, to me that's a bit of a red flag. Tension's better. Lean into the friction, lean into the tension. Our steering group up until now, these are people who have fundamental disagreements with each other, and they've been working together for the last 2.5 years, and our next steering group has been selected for the differences of opinions. So lean into the difference. Another one is the amount of comms, and again Mike's talked about that with his filmmaking. We've really embraced this, and what you see here is a bunch of pictures of various public engagements, lots of social media, webbing, and the voice goes both ways. It's really easy to be working away and assuming that everyone else knows what you're going on about, but they don't. So looking out, looking in, looking out, and just constantly talking, looking for understanding. And then the final lesson would be a champion to your place. So if you see on the right here that is Waiheke, and on the left that's your world. So remembering on what you can do, think global and act local. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much, Miranda. Miranda's caught up with Thomas and I via Zoom on at least a couple of occasions and shared her infinite wisdom. So we're really appreciative of that. And thank you so much for sharing that with the wider group and for sharing your time with us today, Miranda. We really, really appreciate it. You are very welcome to stay on and continue on for the workshop session as well. We'll probably get the Zoom attendees to break out into their own little room, and then, because we'll break into tables and they can have their own table via Zoom. We'll see how we go. Okay, we've got Dennis Tegg, Waikato Regional Councillor, who we're very pleased to have with us today. Thank you, Dennis. And then after this, we'll get into the fun stuff. Not that Dennis is fun.
Yeah, no, not fun. Yeah, thanks, Evan. Look, I went to the first meeting in Whitianga was a couple of 3 months ago, and I thought, there'll be 20 or 30 people, typical public meeting, and there were 250 people there, and that blew me away. And then to see the quality of the speakers you've just heard from today gives me a lot of confidence that you have the makings here to really make a difference. And so that's going to be the sort of theme of my talk, is how do you now sort of bundle up all that passion and knowledge and effect change in the system. And I know that's sort of a bit of the boring bit, but that's really what you have to start thinking about, is how you turn your interest in this subject into actual change. So that's where I'm going to go with this. I won't talk about the Regional Council other than it extends from Taupo to Coromandel. I'm the representative for Thames Coromandel. So it is quite difficult to get marine issues front and centre in front of that council, given the sort of general makeup of it. But I think if your sort of passion comes through, I think you will blow away the other councillors, because that's not something that they're normally used to dealing with. It's usually about dairy farming and polluting rivers and stuff like that. So there is a lot of opportunity, I think, for you to make a change. There are basically two, if we're talking about marine protection, I think there are strands, aren't there? There's the central government strand, which is the sea change thing, and then the government's response, which they've called revitalising the Gulf. So you do have the opportunity still to be engaged in that process. But what I want to concentrate on is the other strand where you can affect change, which is effectively a once-in-a-generation opportunity with the review of the Regional Council's coastal plan. And so this plan is 20 years old, which is actually quite appalling, I think. But you now are timing your run right at the point when that plan's being reviewed. So this is a really great opportunity, I think, to effect change through that. I won't go too much down into the legal weeds, but there is now lots of sort of backup, if you like, from the law to support what you want to do. And the first part of that is what's called the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement. And that's a statement that's been promulgated, if you like, by central government and is binding on every council. And so whatever the regional council does has to have regard to that coastal policy statement. And that has really strong provisions in it relating to particularly protecting Indigenous biodiversity. And so there are phrases in there such as you have to avoid doing certain things if you're going to impact on biodiversity. And avoid means basically you can't allow it to happen. So there is quite strong, at the very top level, there's quite strong ability to protect marine biodiversity. And then the other change that's come through in the last 2 or 3 years is a decision that's arisen out of the hapu of Motiti Island off the Bay of Plenty coast. And they've taken a case all the way to the Court of Appeal and won. And effectively what that says, and I just want to read the actual correct phrasing because it's quite important. Where are we? They held that a regional council may impose controls over fisheries resources under the RMA, such as the protection of Indigenous biodiversity, provided it does not do so for Fisheries Act purposes. So what that means now is with the precedent of that case, there is the ability in this coastal plan review to bring in marine protection issues that protect the biodiversity in the ocean. And so that's a really important sort of change that's happened only in the last 2 or 3 years. So that's now established law, and there's a coastal plan review going on in Northland where they've sort of picked this up. And local iwi and forest and bird and environmental groups like the one that you may be thinking about forming here have now turned around the regional council, which was previously up there, which was previously not too keen on this whole idea, and they are now supporting the idea of marine protection through their own coastal plan. So we're the sort of third cab off the rank, if you like, and so there's a real opportunity to use that mechanism to get the sort of protection you want. Now that could be, doesn't necessarily mean a no-take zone, that's one option, but there's a whole lot of nuance that you could have in there. So you could, for example, have some protection against various fishing methods, which still allowed you to go out and catch a feed. So, there's all sorts of various mechanisms within that. It's not just all or nothing. There's quite a lot of, as I say, nuance in that. So those are the sort of the sort of opportunities this plan presents. So then, I suppose the question is how do you best get involved to affect that sort of change? And it seems to me you really have to be organised, and you have to think about the legal structure or structures that you have that you can use to get involved in that process, because it's not easy. I can tell you, it's not something. And you saw from Miranda's talk, the sort of thing that they're having to do in terms of fundraising and developing evidence and so on. So, for to shoot this home, you really need to have evidence. So it's a bit like Mike said. It's no good just turning up to the minister and saying, "Well, there's no scallops out there." You actually need to have the evidence, and that involves people, doing that research and being able to present it. Now, there are lots of experts out there who can help you with that, and I've seen that happen in Northland, but then you need to maybe pay for their services, and maybe you need to pay for some legal advice and so on. So that's why having a good structure and thinking about how you're going to use that structure to fundraise and bring this sort of evidence is really, really important. And if I think back to my own experience, I think of Coromandel Watchdog, right? So I was involved in that group. I've sort of stepped away a wee bit now, but for 30 years. And that group was like an umbrella group over the whole peninsula. It was to stop mining basically on conservation land. And there were lots of little subgroups. And they all sort of fed into that umbrella group. So you could still have Tairua doing its thing and Whangamata doing its thing, but you had an overall umbrella, and that group was able to effect amazing change in terms of preventing mining, and we still haven't got mining in the conservation park north of the Kopo Hikawai Road. So that's the sort of structure that I think you need, and that group was involved in the sort of campaigns that Miranda talked about, media, community work, doing its own sort of community work, and then being involved in the legal process. So I think I'll leave it there. I think probably the best way forward is if you've got any questions around how this could work, I'm happy to do my best to answer them.
Can we just point out that Watchdog is still going?
Yes.
We're still working on it.
Yeah.
None of that was past tense.
No, none of that's past tense. That's right. Just my involvement is I've moved on to other issues.
Can you remind us of the time frame of the process?
Sure. So the plan review started probably 9 months ago. The council's been out and sought feedback, and they've identified the main themes, and you'll be pleased to know that biodiversity is the top theme that's emerged from the feedback. The next phase in the next few months is the council will go out and consult with iwi. So we actually met with the Hauraki Māori Trust Board a few months ago, and they said, we can't speak for all the iwi, you need to go and speak to each of the 12 iwi. So that's going to happen. And then by April, they'll draft up a plan. It'll be very much a draft, but there'll be an opportunity then for more feedback. And then once that process is through, so this is not a short process, and then once the plan is finalised, there'll be a chance for formal objection, and that's the point at which you have to be ready with your formal submission, so that you're on the record as a submitter. And once you're on the record as a submitter, you can then have the status or the legal ability to take it to the next level. So if you're not happy with what the council comes up with, and it'll be commissioners who decide, not councillors in the end, then you can take it to the Environment Court and even beyond, which is what happened with Maititi Island. They had to go all the way to the Court of Appeal to get the result they wanted. But I don't think that should be necessary now, given that you're the third area to sort of face these sort of issues. Hopefully these issues can be resolved without having to go right through the whole legal avenues.
How far offshore does the regional council?
Yeah, good question. So the regional council's jurisdiction starts basically where the sea wets an area. So if you think of a beach where the high tide mark is, and from that point out to the 12-mile limit.
At the regional council, does the coastal plan review process the only opportunity to institute material change?
Pretty much in terms of the marine environment. Of course, there's what happens on the land is part of another review or another plan. So unfortunately the the two areas are not combined into one process, which I think is a mistake, but that's what the law says. So this coastal plan review only affects what happens from that high tide mark out to the 12-mile limit.
And at what point does an interested party get to look inside the review process? Is that transparent and open?
Yes, it is. So, and what I recommend you do is go to the Regional Council website and just sign up for updates. So they'll record your email, and then as an individual, as in a group, you can keep informed about what the process is and when you have your chance to have your say.
And that can be sort of somewhat interactive, can it? Questions and answers.
There'll be further opportunity, I think, for public engagement when the draft plan comes out, sort of mid next year. And then there'll be the formal process, the legal process, where you certainly will have a chance. You'll be able to appear and make submissions and bring your evidence and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Yeah, hi Dennis. Is it all right to talk a bit about sedimentation, or you just want to stick with
Yeah, you can if you like. It's just that it won't be part of this review, unfortunately, because it's above that high tide mark.
Well, I think it's a good point. We've got Whangamata, Tairua, Whitianga, Whanapā catchments often adversely affected in high rainfalls from short rotation plantation forestry.
Yep.
Now, I've read the National Environmental Standards for Plantation Forestry. You've also got an ESC, it's an erosion susceptibility classification. You've got 4 zones. The worst is the red zone, right, which requires a consent for a forester to clear for the forest. You guys are the ones that give the consent. Now, a lot of this land, because I've noticed just driving between here and Whangamata, a lot of that land is very, very steep. It should never, ever have been put in short rotation plantation forestry.
Right.
And Mike was saying how pristine this is, and it is pristine, but after 200 mils in 24 hours, which we can get quite easily, sometimes can be far worse.
Sure.
This is nothing but a cesspit. It's brown, because the plume goes out to sea for miles.
Yep.
The same at Whangamata, the same at Mercury Bay, and the same at Okotra. To knock shit out of the fishing industry is hitting the low-hanging fruit. And fair enough, it needs tidying up here and there. But for God's sake, apply some attention to some easy fixes, like replanting that steep slope in indigenous trees so that the landowner gets a return, and the country gets a return, and the coral environment gets a bit of a breather instead of just putting it straight back into a 25-year repeat process. You guys can change it.
Yeah, to a degree. I agree. I mean, I think the other issue around that is sequestration of carbon, and the Climate Commission has said very clearly that we should be planting more native trees, not plantation forestry. So, I don't disagree with what you're saying. You've got an ally in that sense. But the unfortunate thing is those land. I mean, it's a bit of a nonsense in a way, but the way this coastal plan review is being structured, what happens on the land is not going to be sort of central to the submissions you can make. It'll come with other reviews of land-based issues.
If we're going to face an overarching ecosystem way of running commercial fishing, if you like, from the mountains to the sea, we've all heard of it.
Yeah.
Yet so much concentration gets put on the extraction, not enough gets put on what's happening up on the land. And there's some easy fixes, and one of them is just what I'm talking about. And while on the point, another easy fix is to perhaps ban the taking of big snapper and big crayfish. By all means, capture it if it hasn't got an embolism. Take a picture of it, let it go. Commercially, they're not worth a lot of money, the big crayfish. They could be regulated to have to be returned. That would be an easy fix, and it would help with your so-called tinnerbout.
Right. Well, I mean, that's just a submission that you could make as an individual or the groups you represent. So that's the sort of thing you have to thrash out as a group, where you land with those sort of issues. Yeah. But the main point I make is to encourage you to be involved in the process, because, frankly, posting on Facebook or having sort of, talks about it is not going to affect change. And it's a hard process, and I'm not saying it's easy, but if you want to affect change, you have to be involved at the sort of legal submission sort of stuff.
In your job, why aren't you advocating for these things? Why do we have to go through all this rigmarole? Why aren't you being proactive about like putting buffer zones? Why are pine trees allowed to be planted right at the edge of the river? Why aren't big crayfish allowed to be taken? In the fjords, they're doing it voluntarily. The crayfishermen are doing it voluntarily. They're leaving the big boys behind. You know, why aren't you being our representative? Why are
Well,
you back on us?
You do everything, Dennis.
Can I interject?
yeah, sure.
Just I'll interject. These are all great points. This is exactly the stuff that we want to talk about. So this is the actual purpose of this upcoming session. I'm just noting time. I wanted to leave an hour for this. We're now down to 45 minutes. So if everybody's happy.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, Dennis. All fantastic points. And this is exactly the type of stuff that we're talking about, where I think no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, these are the types of things that we can probably just about all agree on. So for God's sakes, if we as a community group can decide that these are the principles, these are the objectives, these are the missions that we want to work on when we go to submit to these various processes, we're then not just having to do it as individuals and having to do that research and investigation and coming up with all the evidence on our own. We can help to support one another. Is there any other questions for any of the speakers, I guess, just before we crack into the fun? Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to break you guys into little groups, similar to the last workshop, or into tables. So we will just take a little moment here to organize ourselves and just sort of spread these tables out such. We'll get hopefully about 10 people per table maximum, 8 to 10 people. We're really going to encourage you to please sit at a table with somebody that you don't know, somebody that you may or may not necessarily be aligned with. We'll just get ourselves situated, and then we will crack into the workshop session. Okay, folks, I've gone ahead and put a few pieces of paper around the room at the various tables. There's a few pieces of paper on the tables along the back there. If everybody could just form in little huddles around each of the pieces of paper, get about 8 to 10 people, please. We'll try to do this as COVID-friendly as possible. Yes. Just find a piece of paper and grab a few people to join you around a piece of paper. There's a couple pieces along the back there as well, if folks want to use the pieces of paper in the back of the room. perfect there. Yep. It's good. Okay, thanks everybody. Everybody all tucked in there? Okay. I'm just thinking this group here and this group over here, you guys might want to split yourselves in half. There's a couple more tables along the back there. Just if there's somebody at your table that, if you want to speak and within your groups, you might want to split up a little bit, make your groups a little bit smaller. Just saying. Okay. Good idea. Okay, so for those of you that joined us up in Mercury Bay, this format might seem somewhat familiar. So as I discussed earlier, we had the previous workshop back in July up in Mercury Bay, and we got everybody that was sort of had put their hands up at that stage to basically talk about what their visions were for the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park. We encouraged people to just think as broadly as possible. Don't think about any sort of hindrances or reasons why that's not going to work. What is your vision? We asked people to describe what the issues were and also what their wishes were for the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park. So that's sort of our scope for the area that we're looking at. So it's a bit of a synthesis of some of the ideas that had come out, and we've also got a full list of all of the visions, issues, and wishes that will just basically be cycling up on the screen here as you guys work through, and that you can just use those as a bit of a prompt for these discussions going forward. So we're a little bit cramped for time. I'm just going to take the moment to mention the club will open up at 3:30, so we do need to keep ourselves somewhat timely. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe Warren and them are open to accepting guests to stay on if people wanted to stick around for a beer or something and continue discuss. Hey, thank you, Warren. What a good guy. What a good guy. No pressure. No pressure. Cool. Thank you guys very much. Okay, so look, we've had quite a bit of discussion today, and I think it's fair to say that we're all, if you're still here and you haven't run away yet, we're all talking about cooperation and collaboration. What can we as a community work together to achieve collectively? So if we move forward on that basis, and for the sake of argument, that we were going to move ahead and create a group here on the Coromandel Peninsula focused on maximizing abundance within the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park. I really appreciated Dennis's comments about how we could potentially structure ourselves, going forward so that we could still achieve individual communities' aspirations, but all still working toward these wider, more systemic goals that we all know are necessary for us to be able to succeed in our individual communities. So working ahead on that basis, if a group were to be formed on the Coromandel, what would the mission of that group be? So I don't want you to think about, today is not about how we're going to do this, it's what are we going to do? So with the mission, it's a very broad statement. It's not going to be talking about specific objectives or specific goals or specific tasks. It's really about what that wider agreed mission could be. So I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes at your individual tables to talk amongst yourselves about what that mission could be. You've got big pieces of paper there to write those out as concisely as possible, and we'll do our best to make sure that we get each of the tables' individual feedback captured so that that is widely shared. We're going to be using all of your feedback from today's session to feed into a future session as we work out how we're going to achieve all of the things we wish to achieve. So, go. My brain's not quite that big. I wasn't sure if the folks on Okay, no, I wasn't sure if there was be a couple others. That's perfect.
Table microphone.
That's going to be
I stole one from the really I'll run it down there roughly so you don't need people to come up all the way.
Cool. Clever.
I don't know how I'll run it down there.
I was just saying with my
Yeah. This is done, but it's not that.
But yeah, I just run the loop.
Test. 1, 2.
Thank the fishing club for the hosting us.
Absolutely. I did at the beginning, but I will do it again. Yes.
For the food, so we need to. Maybe you want to announce it
Between myself All right, pull those mission statements together. We'll give you guys a couple more minutes. Want to hear those really good mission statements?
Oh, Grant. Sorry, Coromandel. Oh, I'm Evan. Yeah, nice to meet you. Sorry, I didn't recognize you. I've seen him a
Okay, folks, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys very much. Hopefully you got enough of a chance there to come up with some wonderful, marvelous potential mission statements for any proposed potential group going forward. Would really love to be able to get a chance for us to share those just around so folks can sort of hear what we've come up with. So we'll just go around and ask each of the tables to just very quickly just take a couple of minutes and please just synthesize what you've discussed, come up with in your groups. We've got a microphone set up there in the middle as well, so for the tables over there, you can just come up to the microphone there with your piece of paper and speak. We'll come over here first. Does one of you guys want to speak to what you guys have come up with? I know you do. Shall I, maybe? Yeah, right. If I can read it. Okay, we got some shy personnel over here. We're talking no long lines to be used. Keep recreational fishing in our area, and diving, very important. No bottom trawlers or dredging, no personers. Okay. It's getting a little bit objective-y and less mission-y, but that's okay. We're trying to stay broad, based.
Oh, cheers. I was trying to stay out of that. Our mission statement would be to become a recognised voice to improve species abundance and create a better environment. So having a voice in formal processes, create and use appropriate expertise, whether it be local or regional or both, and having proper resources and being able to get results recognised, and restoration of depleted environment and resources.
Yeah. Fantastic. That's exactly what we're talking about. Okay. Does this table here want to come over to the microphone here and share?
Michael's on my screen. I just want to say that. Protection of water quality, biodiversity, abundance of fish stocks, protection of seabed and nursery, which is exactly what you guys were talking about, finding a common ground for ocean users, more control of how marine space is utilized, Ngāti Hei point of contact and mode of contact, and community outreach.
Kia ora. We just called ours Mission Possible, and basically the simplest goal is improved biodiversity as soon as possible. The land and the sea environments are totally connected. So in spite of the WRC's plans pertaining to the coast and the ocean and another whole shebang for the land-based planning, we think it may be that we are going to all have to submit to both strands.
Okay, this is shaping up quite well. Does this table in the corner want to have a go? There's a microphone just here. Oh, yep. Got a big booming voice here.
Our group is about water quality, starting up at the top there and working its way down. Another one that came up was the invasive species that are slowly creeping into the environment, pandarins, etc. Looking after that part of it. And also, when you're looking at the harbours along the coast here, your Wongas, Biddies here, banning commercial fishing from them. Thames we would know something about how to go about that. And that's all we got today.
Cool. Sounded good. Okay, this table just over here. You guys want to share? There's a microphone. I'm just there if you like.
I'll start at the bottom. Eat Kina. Educate the younger generation, bringing more awareness, consciousness, and figuring out who is aware and who isn't. Only diving for scallops. Looking further into the damage caused by dredging and banning the use. Fishing bans outside and using fishing outside the reserves. Is that what you meant? And defining sustainability for fisheries so that it's clear amongst everyone. Connecting between Whenua and Moana. Healthy marine ecosystem, understanding and partnerships, and more fish.
That's it. I think you guys nailed it.
Hi, I got chosen because I'm the only one who can read my writing. Shall I hold that, or? That's all right. That's okay. Oh, yeah, that'll be good. So we had our main mission statement was to increase and protect the local East Coast abundance of marine life, and we had some sub-statements, which one of them was to stop bulk harvest and destructive methods, increase in fish stock and enhance the marine environment, protect Bethnic environment. Bethnic's a new word for me. What does that mean? The bottom. I'm an English teacher, I should have known that. And protect Bethnic environment from destructive practices, for example, dredging and maintaining water quality, microenvironment. And also one which was quite important for me was to create awareness and public understanding. And some of the speakers today were talking about doing it together. And I mean, I come here. I'm in a deep sea fishing club, and I'm not a deep sea fisherman, and I don't. But I've been talking to these guys over here who have been, and they've been telling me about the tag and release system. And so I've learnt heaps today just about what you guys are into. So that for me, doing it together instead of sort of having one group against another group, and yeah. So that's what I came up as. Thank you.
Hey, that's fantastic. I think between the sort of tables there, I just sort of picked up, I think we've kind of picked up on all the sort of same key elements that we picked up at the last workshop between the visions and the wishes that were sort of expressed from there. So we're getting a little bit close on time, so I think we'll wrap it out with one last little session here. It's going to be very similar to this one here. We'll get you guys to discuss now. We've talked broadly here about a sort of an overarching mission statement. Now we're just going to drill that down a little bit further and talk about potential specific objectives. Not, again, exactly how we're going to do it, but potential, let's call them campaigns, for lack of a better word. What are the specific objectives? We will identify and consolidate a mission statement, but then what would some of those potential objectives be? Once we've come back and we've shared that, I'll come back, I'll let you guys know how we're going to use all of this information and turn it into our next session going on from here. So, talk about specific objectives now. There was a little bit of that in the last discussion, which is okay, but now we're just going to talk about specific. We've talked about the issues already previously. We've talked about what our issues are, so what are the actual objectives of such a proposed group?
What do you do for jobs?
I'm a water engineer, three water engineer.
Three water
Well, I was working around the Coromandel very first Okay, folks, we'll give you one more minute there to get those objectives jotted down, and we'll come together and wrap it up.
Yeah. So, well, what I'd like to do is just quickly speak to it just when we're done, because it follows on from what's going on, and I want people to submit, you know, so.
Awesome, that's excellent. That's really cool,
Yeah.
Quite fortuitous. Okay, folks, we'll wrap that up right there. We want to be very respectful to the club and offering this venue, very kind of them. We've got the lovely Alison Smith here distributing some fantastic news as well, which Warren is going to speak to. Well done. Right after the event. So we'll just very quickly get you guys feedback on the potential objectives going forward, and then I'll fill you guys in on the next steps from here. So if everybody could please be polite and listen to the table over here.
He went away. Kia ora. This is our specific objectives, although we did tend to have a few side conversations going on, so we may not have got them all. Marine reserves and identification of areas of particular vulnerability, such as particular reefs and coasts and areas where there's particular species. Identify most valuable areas that need protection, and that was with an eye, especially I gather, to the powers of the regional council, but of course any group could presumably also look at national level issues. Improve the recreational fishing and diving experience, and note that that's really important for people's mental health and well-being. Ban bottom trawling, purse seining, dredging and other benthic destroying fishing methods. Update recreational take by area, so basically the bag limits, I guess. And I think that means restrict in many cases. Apply ecosystem-based management, so you're not just doing individual species, but thinking about how the system actually works, the biophysical and ecosystem, and improve water quality, and particularly look at the land-based contaminant migration to the sea, presumably. And I took the liberty of adding fishing industry independent research, because much of the research is done by fishing companies for fishing companies, but that substitutes for independent research very often. And then exercising partnership under the Treaty of Waitangi. I think we've talked about lots more than that. But
Beautiful, thank you. This table here, do you guys want to just quickly take a minute and tell us about your objectives? There's a microphone just there if you want to, sorry.
Thank you. We've got a bigger one. Hello. So we started exploring the concept of water quality, talking about fringe planting, forestry and farming to restrict runoff, probably looking at existing fringe planting regulations need changing. I think generally the point about limiting runoff, it came up in the previous conversation, understand the response by Dennis about the way things are organised in terms of regulations and legal, but we thought we need to tackle that anyway. It's an issue we need to go for. We talked about increasing the abundance of biodiversity in fish, specifically looking at reducing numbers of fish taken, limiting types of fishing, size of fishing, and particularly looking at destructive fishing techniques. Obviously, dredging is a big one at the moment. There could be others that we need to look at, understand the things that would apply. Anything that we felt that was impacting the benthic zone, bottom fishing techniques, we should look at. We also talked a little bit about, in terms of water quality runoff from subdivisions. So the feeling was probably not a massive priority here. There is room for expansion, we believe, of a potential subdivision here is not that much bigger. Probably a bigger issue in other areas. I guess the question there is how much our voice will be strengthened by linking to other groups. It might therefore become an issue. They were the main points we covered, I think. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Awesome, thank you guys. Just this table in the middle here? Yeah, thanks, Anna.
Kia ora. Okay, we just came up with a few actual campaigns, but the main thrust being working in our own backyard, but then collectively combining our learnings and our efforts to take them forward into bigger fora. For example, the Hahei Marine Reserve has been flagged as a place, as a reserve to be extended. As one of our table pointed out, it's much easier to extend something that's already there, so that's a really good starting point. And of course, this all has to be a collaborative approach with our Te Tiriti hats on. We also are very keen for the Whitianga Harbour catchment plan to hurry up. We haven't heard anything for over 3 years on that, and it's really important. And then our other main campaign is stopping benthic disturbance, and we're very unsettled by the trawling corridors that have been flagged by the government recently.
Very good. Just curiosity, this is just me, but how many people would be interested in ending bottom trawling in the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park? Just out of curiosity. How many people would be interested in ending bottom trawling in the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park? I'm just curious. No, it's okay. Thank you. No, it's okay. Just out of personal curiosity. It is a theme. It's okay. It is a theme that's come up consistently, so I don't want to single anybody out. Yep.
3 or 4 years ago, there was talk about new trawling methods using tubes and all that kind of stuff. What's happened with that?
Look, I can't speak to that person. Here's the man right here. I would suggest you talk to Barry. Barry is very, very knowledgeable. But I'm just being very cognizant of time and respectful to Warren and the team here. So if we could please just the last couple of tables, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll let you guys know how we're going to roll this into next steps. There is a microphone just here if you want to speak to them. Thanks.
Murals, ocean awareness, art-inspired events, improved fish scallop abundance, localized reserves, management systems to show where we are now and what we can see in the future, local data, marine ecology measurements, fish counts, and seabed counts, boundaries for commercial limits and recreational limits within, so extending marine reserves, maybe there's a recreational zone versus commercial zones. That one's already been done. Clean water.
Okay, great. We've just got one last group here.
Okay, we had firstly collate the working groups from Kairua, Whitianga, Whangamata, wherever we've created groups. Put policy for the future end of the scallop rahui in place. For example, aquaculture as an alternative to the native gathering. Stop bottom trawling. One example of the method to do this might be that the government pays off the trawler operators and takes ownership of the quota and then doesn't issue it at all. Combine land and ocean protective processes, not just the ocean ones, which we've been discussing. We had differing views about marine reserves. Some of our members said that marine reserves modify fish behaviour and expansion of them should be investigated. Purse seining should be banned, limit longlining, and overhaul the quota management system, and put submissions to the regional coastal policy plan to protect local environment and more regulation of the fishing for regulation of the fishing take. And one thing I would like, just as on a personal level, is that I sail a little 8-metre trimaran out of Mercury Bay, and quite often these, I think you guys own these boats out here, will go past me at 25 knots, 30 metres away, and I get a huge wake and my cup of coffee gets spills. Please have mercy on me next time.
Please be. Oh, sorry, we missed one table. Very sorry, guys.
Well, basically what everyone has said is pretty much what our table said, but Mr. Elwood here thought there should be more policing of what goes on out there.
Yep.
And of course with the invasive species, well, I think there is already scientific evidence that it's there, it's already there, but using it to do something about it.
Yeah, enforcement, monitoring, very important things that sometimes the government can't do on its own, and that's where a community sometimes can come in quite valuable. Look, thank you guys very much. I think we've got the groundwork for some potential mission statements and objectives going forward, just based on what I've heard today. We're not going to go away and synthesize this and establish this on our own. I think the best step would be for us to try and synthesize all the feedback. And I'm thinking that the next meeting, we will basically come together and discuss what those synthesized potential mission statements and objectives are, and see where we can basically get the most agreement between everybody. It's really, really important that we continue that collaboration and cooperation going forward. I think it's super critical. So just as a matter of interest, if we were to schedule another meeting, and if we did want it to happen prior to Christmas, it would most likely happen via Zoom. Just curious who here would be comfortable either on a Zoom call or finding their way to a friend's house who has Zoom capability if we were to move the next meeting to Zoom. Does that work for anybody? Is there anybody that doesn't work for, that couldn't find their way onto a Zoom call somehow? All we need is your email address, so we can email you the link to the meeting. Is there anybody that wouldn't work for? We want to make sure we include anybody and everybody who's... Okay, cool. I'm going to hand it over to Warren just quickly. He's going to just talk to us about some wonderful news that's just been delivered to our doorstep quite fortuitously in the course of the thing. And then Thomas, I think, will just wrap up with some closing remarks. Thank you guys very much for your time today. It's really, really appreciated.
Hey guys, just quickly, obviously it's been mentioned a few times with our pink mail situation and that. First off, I'd just like to acknowledge Alison Smith and all the work she does out there. You'll see we just got some papers. Thank you. We just got some papers thrown out there on the table, but one of the resounding things for me that's come through is communication. It's really important in getting these issues out in front of the people. So in this article, we've got to the Minister. He's opened it up. He's given us some options on including the pink mau-mau and all the reef species in a finfish bag. Please, please, please submit on it. 18th of November it closes. If you don't say something, nothing will happen. And one of the things I've learned too in the years I've been involved in it is individual submissions count as much as group ones. They'll look at this club and we say we're a club of 1,500 members, we put in one submission. But if they get 1,000 individual submissions, that carries some pretty heavy weight, So all your submissions count individually and as a group. So please make a submission on these issues. We're getting some real traction now with the ministry and stuff like that, and this is iwi and communities working together, clubs, everybody working together and making some real change. So please do submit. And thanks, guys, for coming along. Great. It's great to see, we're all time poor, but everyone's putting in an effort to come along and be involved and make their voices heard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Congratulations to Evan for organising this event. Fantastic. Great turnout, and thank you very much to the club again for hosting us and for the wonderful Kai that appeared on the table here out of Magic. There could be a Koha box somewhere out there if you want to contribute at the moment. I think it's Evan and a few people paid for this, but if you want to put some money in the box for it, we'll figure out where the box might be or what box we use for, I don't know, a hat? Your hat, yes, that's right, there's a hat, somebody's hat. Anyhow, so thank you very much. This process was started in June. It came out of a meeting of friends of myself and others to think about what is really an important issue, and it's the ocean. And so we started this first event, which was way bigger than we thought it would be. We were actually, we'd booked a venue for 80 people, but it was double booked. So we were handed over to the church next door, which could seat 200, which was good, because we got 300 people there on that day, on June the 5th. And so it was good fortune that it's come that far, and I'm looking very hopeful into the future that we have so many good people who all agree on the basic foundational ideas that we want to do. And so I think I have a vision that we will eventually somehow come together and form some sort of formal group. And I think the time might come at some stage where we ask people to nominate themselves or others to step forward to some sort of committee that can actually do some mahi and put some words down on paper. And yes.
Oh, just when you finished.
Okay.
I just remembered.
Come here.
When we.
Come here.
Sorry, I just remembered seeing yesterday a notice from the Ministry of Fisheries New Zealand, to say that there's 2 workshops on Zoom on the 1st and 2nd, so tomorrow and Tuesday, on cameras on boats, on fishing, commercial fishing boats, and also on protection of Hector's dolphin in the South Island. Oddly, nothing about Maui dolphin up here, but just so you know. And while I'm here, I'll just thank these people who organised all this.
Kia ora, thank you very much. And I also want to one more time say that whatever we do, it's a treaty partnership issue, and I'm really, the choreo was fantastic from you. Forgot your name, I'm sorry. Tafara, yes. So it has to be working together for all of us. It's a partnership going forward, and I think iwi are central to whatever we do, because wherever we see things happening, iwi seem to have a good view on the protection of the land around us, because they have lived in harmony with this land way before all the Pakeha came here, and we sort of kind of screwed it up for them, over the last 100 years. So we came with our machines, with our motors and this, and we harvested all this wonderful sea life. So within the last 100 years, we have decimated the life around us, and we need to rebuild it. That's our obligation. We need to come back to rebuilding it for our children, for all the people of this land, and we have to do this work. And if we don't do this, then we'll lose everything, and we can't afford that to happen. So, kia ora, and it has to be a partnership, and it will be a partnership. I'm looking forward to working with all the good people here. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Before I do, we've made some really good ground. That there's probably a lot of people in the room that aren't involved with fishing clubs and things like this. Just wanted to educate a few people on a few things like Wangata, Tairua and Mercury Bay, and Matarang as well. Those fishing clubs are like hubs of the community. For example, in Whitianga we have over 3,000 affiliated members and a population of only 6,000 people, so that's over half the community. I just wanted to, a little bit of a misconception about fishing tournaments in particular, just to give you an example of the way things have evolved over the last couple of decades. We had a tournament earlier in March. It's actually become one of the biggest competitions in New Zealand. So we had 100 teams or boats, and we generated $800,000 for the community in less than a week. We only killed 2 fish in that entire tournament, 2 marlin.
Wow.
Yeah. So $400,000.
Kia ora, that's fantastic. That's really, really, really good to hear. Yeah.
So versus a tournament, say 30 years ago, there could have been upwards of 35 marlin killed over 3 or 4 days.
No, kia ora, that's fantastic.
Which just leads me on to a question I've got for you, Thomas.
Yep.
I've just got a copy of your submission to the Waikato Regional Council back at the end of June, and I won't read the whole thing off.
Sure.
I'm just going to pick out a couple of paragraphs that relate directly to us as fishing clubs.
Sure.
I just see you've got in here your recommendations. I recommend that marlin fishing becomes a non-compliant activity. Marlin are not fished for the sustenance of families, but for sporting reasons. This is no longer acceptable reason to target, torture and kill this species in our marine park. Now, I'd just like to ask you whether you'll put that submission in as an individual or on behalf of the group.
As an individual,
Yeah.
that's mine. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And I'll just move on to just quickly finish off. Further catch limits on private taking of fish should be tightened in order to down-regulate the impact of private fishing has on ecosystems. Fishing competitions result in competitional killing of species, which I hope with what I've just explained has educated you a little bit on that, in great numbers that are critical for the future of our coastal ecosystems, and the indigenous biodiversity should become a regulated activity requiring resource consent. These competitions attract fishers from locations far away and without a clear cultural connection to the ecosystem they are impacting on, and damage our indigenous biodiversity for the benefit of private entities and business sponsors. So I'll just clear one thing up to there. All these clubs are incorporated societies, are totally non-for-profit, no one's making money out of it. These are community events, these are family clubs, they're getting the next generation to a Kiwi pastime, one of the best hobbies you can have. Everyone who fishes these days is a conservationist. No one's keeping their limit, everyone's releasing fish. Photographs are a big thing now. Tag and release is a big thing. We're doing a lot for research, and it's just we've got to nip this sort of talk in the bud because it's totally.
Correct.
It's totally
That'll be fantastic. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you. Whenever I see a marlin hanging, we see photos of marlins hanging there on the gallows. My heart cries. You know. Yep. Yep.
So we have the Toro butchery here, we have Blink Smokehouse.
Sure.
Every fish that does unfortunately end up on the scales is 100% eaten.
Cool.
I've got smoked marlin in my fridge right now.
Yeah, yeah.
None of it's wasted, there's no dumping, there's none of this.
Yeah.
So that's just another.
Yeah. Let me just explain my personal view on this.
Why don't you carry on?
Yeah, we carry this on later, but just want to say that if we educate our youth into having killing a fish as a sport, it doesn't sit well with me. I think it's life out there that we take for food occasionally for the amount we need to, but making it into a sport has never quite sit well with me, quite frankly. And I'm just putting this out there. That's my personal view. You know. Okay. Cool. Thank you very much, Kira. Sure.
You've got those views, and you're an organiser. How
Yeah.
can I trust the process here today?
Well, there are many people involved. I'm just an organizer who has kindled it, you know. But I will not be.
The whole intention is to take everybody's combined feedback today, and we want to come back to you guys, and we want to actually get full agreement on what that mission and what those objectives will be going for. We're not going to go and decide that on our own, or put our own biases or anything along those lines. It truly has to be a collaborative effort if it's going to succeed. That's just the fact.
That's why we're here as a community.
Cool.
It's important that we're all engaged in this process because we all have different values. There are commercial fishermen involved here, there are recreational fishermen involved here. There's a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life. What we want is balance. We want to make sure that we're all represented and we all get what we need out of this environment. If we've got more fish in the water, then we all lost what we've got. It's better for our mental health, it's better for everything. And that's ultimately, I think, what everyone here is here for.
Yeah. Kira, thank you. Okay.
You listen to what Thomas has written in here, we'd all be sitting on the beach. We wouldn't have a vote. We wouldn't have our
Thomas is one voice,
you know,
in this whole room.
But it's quite
And there are commercial voices in this room that have a different thing to say. And there are vegans probably in this room as well. There's down a few who have a different view on fish as well. It doesn't matter an individual view. What matters is what we do collectively and how we make a compromise to look after everybody.
Okay, folks, lots of
things we could do is by the 18th of November submit to the Pink Powwow thing.
Great. That's something right there. Yep. So look, guys, we'll be back in contact with you. If there is anybody whose contact details we don't have, and if you are interested in staying involved, there is the Facebook group that's been set up. Otherwise, we've got a sign-in sheet. If you leave your email, particularly, we can continue to be in contact with you and make sure that you are involved and engaged in the next steps. I've got a link up actually on the presentation. So what I can do is I can email out the presentation that I made before, and it's got a link to the Facebook group there. Okay, thank you guys all very much. Great day. Thank you all for coming out and for your time. Yes, please. I'm going to collect the pieces of paper, so don't get rid of those.
Well, it needs to be clarified, yeah.
I know. Yeah, just can't let this guy pull this piece of paper out here and stupid old piece.
Well, I'm interested about